Today we're going to be sample roasting some coffee. I'm going to walk you through it step by step. First step, get a scale, get your green coffee, and weigh your coffee out to the quantity that you are wanting to sample roast. Generally speaking, a sample roast is about 100 grams of coffee. It's very important when you're sample roasting that each sample weighs the same amount and that you roast each sample to the same degree of roast. Sample roasting is not about drawing out the best character in coffee, but rather exposing the flaws. So we're going to roast this coffee very light. Another really important thing that you need to do when sample roasting is tag your coffee. Every coffee should have its own tag, and that tag should stay with the coffee throughout the sample roasting process. If tags get confused, then your samples get confused, and those errors can be devastating. So today we're going to be roasting on the Probat DRZ. This is a 4-barrel drum system. You can see that the front of the barrel is open so that airflow can move through the drum from front to back. The way that we adjust that airflow is with this rod. If I pull the rod out, the airflow moves through the drum. If I push the rod in, the airflow will move through the cooling tray so that I can cool the coffee. Half and half, the airflow is kind of stagnant between the two. I'll turn on my gas while holding the ignition key and watching the flame to make sure that it lights. Once I see the flame, I'll let go of the ignition key while still pushing in the gas, slowly allowing that to take hold and turn up my gas, leaving that on for just a moment, and then slowly adjusting my airflow out so that my air is around the 50-50 mark. I want to make sure that I give it plenty of time to warm up. I don't want to push the heat to where I jump to the temperature that I want to drop my coffee in at, because the metal has not fully absorbed all of that energy. I want a nice, stable, hot drum at my drop temperature. We've already weighed out our sample, and I have the tag here. So I'm going to put the tag in front of the sample roaster that I'm going to be roasting this sample on. Next, I'm going to take the coffee and put it into my hopper. Carefully. So now we're at 385 degrees. I have my timer set to 0 and ready. I'm going to push my airflow to where the airflow is only through the cooling tray and have my flame on at the lowest setting. When I drop the coffee into the drum, I'm going to start my timer. We're at a minute in, so now I'm going to turn up my flame, keeping my airflow low. So now we're at a minute and 30 seconds into the roast, and I can see that I have reached my turnaround temperature, and now my coffee is going to begin rising in temperature in the drum. So I'm approaching 3 minutes into the roast. At this point, I usually start to see a little bit of steam coming out of the front of the drum, and I want to regulate that pressure and pull that steam out the back of the drum by bringing in a little air through the front. So I do that by pulling this rod out just a small amount. So now we're at about 3.5 minutes into the roast, so I'm going to give this a color check. I usually like to see yellow between 3.5 and 4 minutes, and as you can see, the yellow is beginning. At 4 minutes into the roast, I see that the coffee is now yellowed. At full yellow, I'm going to open up the airflow a little bit more and adjust my gas down a bit. We've lost about 10% of the moisture that the coffee has, 9 to 10%. So now we have less material in the drum for the heat to affect. So we can turn our gas down a little, and we want to pull all of that steam off as we're moving into those caramelization stages. here we're at 6 minutes, and we should start hearing the very first signs of first crack between about 6 and 7 minutes into the roast. And there it is, right on time. So as first crack is sounding off, I like to check the aroma of the coffee just to make sure that I don't have any scorching aromas, to make sure that everything is moving along at the pace that I would like for it to move. I'm also going to check to make sure that any smoke rising off is not rising off too quickly. I like to have a nice rolling first crack. I also want my airflow to be totally open so that any smoke that is being created is being pulled out the back of the drum. Generally, I like to roast the coffee to about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes after first crack begins before I drop the coffee out of the drum. The most important thing, however, is to look at the color of your coffee and to see when you think it's at the color that you want to drop the coffee. And we are there. So I'll close off the airflow, I'll turn off the flame, and I'll turn off the timer as I drop the coffee into the cooling tray. So now that our coffee is roasted and cooled, I'll put it back into the sample tray. And once again, make sure that my tag follows with the coffee. Now our sample is roasted, and it's time for us to do our analytics on the coffee. We want to make sure that anything we analyze about the coffee is recorded and that that record is associated with the same sample. So again, this tag needs to follow it everywhere it goes. Here at Cafe Imports, we like to run it through a color spectrometer. Some places will measure the weight of the coffee prior to roast and then the percentage of weight loss after the roast. And in every case, we want to go ahead and cup that coffee. In cupping the coffee, we want to allow the coffee to off-gas for at least 24 hours. However, the most important thing that you can do is be consistent from sample to sample. So if you have a protocol where you off-gas the coffee for 48 hours or for 18 hours, what's most important is that you do that every single time, that you accurately collect your records and data, and that that data is accessible for future review.